My understanding is this is a Srimad Bhagavatam installation gathering, yes?
This one.
I figured it out. So I want to describe and read a little bit from Canto 1. Yes? And hopefully it'll encourage you to go further and further reading Srimad Bhagavatam. The verse, I want to read two verses. They're from Canto 1, chapter 7. And these two verses, they're part of a short series of verses that express the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. But before I go there, a little background. In the first three chapters, we're heading for chapters 7, but in the first three chapters, we get introduced to the entire Srimad Bhagavatam in the form of one of the persons who heard Srimad Bhagavatam spoken the first time. The first time Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken was by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. The circumstance was Maharaj Parikshit was about to die, and he had gone to this is at the chapter 18 of Canto 1. He had gone to the bank of the sacred river, given his kingdom over to his son, and was preparing to die in 7 days, because he was cursed to die in 7 days. And he wanted to prepare himself. So we don't have notice like 7 days. Maybe we have longer, maybe we don't have that much, but he had that notice. So, among other things that happened on that occasion, from the forest came walking a 16-year-old young Shukadeva Goswami. Uh-oh, look at that. Ooh. Thank you. And the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Shukadev, starts with Canto 2. So Canto 1 is kind of preparing us for Shukadeva Goswami speaking. But in the audience, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken for the first time, was Sutta Goswami. And who is Sutta Goswami? Sutta Goswami was the son of Ramaharshan Sutta. When Vyasadeva divided the Vedas into 4, he also wrote the supplementary literatures from the original same set of verses. There's some detail. And he entrusted that section of his compilation work to Ramaharshan Sutta. So that's described in chapter 4 of Canto 1. And Ramaharshan Sutta met with a little problem. The little problem was, one time he was reciting Puranic histories when Balaram was on tour to sacred places. He passed that place. And everybody, when Balaram entered, all the persons, seeing that Lord Balaram had arrived, they stood. It's just a cultural. They stood to offer their respect with folded palms, except for one person. And that one person that didn't stand to receive Lord Balaram was Ramaharshan. And Balaram knew what that meant, that he was proud. He was thinking, I'm the speaker of the scriptures, so I don't stand when the personality of Godhead, Lord Balaram, comes, because I'm the speaker of the scriptures. So what did Balaram do? He was displeased. He took one blade of grass, kusa grass, and touched it to his chest, and it entered his chest and pierced his heart, and it was a bloodbath right on the Vyasasana. Ramaharshan Sutta died instantly. So the sages that were hearing Ramaharshan Sutta speak were, we were hearing from him, and now he's gone. What are we going to do? Balaram said, if you like, I can bring him back to life. He said, no, you did this for a reason, but what are we to do? And they said, Balaram said, the sun, we have one son back here. The son is the representative of the father. So in place of Ramaharshan, his son can be the speaker. And if you think I've done something wrong, I can undergo some atonement. What atonement would you like? There were several things that were said. And so Balaram continued visiting holy places. So Sutta Goswami happened to be in the assembly, the son of Ramaharshan. He happened to be in the assembly. He was very gifted. And he was asked by the sages in chapter 1 of Canto 1. They as sages, they had astronomical capacities. They had calculated Krishna has left, and after Krishna leaves, what happens? The next yuga begins. What yuga did Krishna appear? Dwapara Yuga. And after Krishna departs, what's the next yuga? This one, Kali Yuga. And they knew, the sages knew, Kali Yuga means bad news. And so they decided, we're sages, let's do something to mitigate, to diminish that bad influence of the age of Kali. So their plan was one yajna after the next, 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 for 1,000 years. That's a long time. To conduct yajnas. As soon as one is stopping, the other one is starting. You create auspiciousness to diminish the pernicious effects of the age of Kali. However, as they were beginning their yajna, they noticed, oh look, here's Sutta. Maybe he can narrate for our benefit all that he heard from Shukadeva Goswami. So the first 3 chapters, it's chapter 1 is 6 questions asked by the sages, and the next 2 and 3, chapters 2 and 3, it's answers by Sutta to their questions. And in those 6 questions, there's the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So if you don't read anything else, you can read the first 3 chapters of Canto 1. But I'm sure you'll want to read more than that. But when you read, understand it's the essence of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. That means it's expanded further in later chapters, in later cantos. So after the first 3 chapters are spoken, the sages wanted to ask a question of Sutta. This is because it's Purana, it's history. So could you describe the history of Srimad Bhagavatam being written? So the next 3 chapters is the history of Srimad Bhagavatam being written. In chapter 4, I'm getting to chapter 7. You'll see why I'm doing what I'm doing. Chapter 4 describes Vyasadeva being capable of seeing past, present, and future. He looked into the future and he saw, yikes, the age of Kali. It's very bad. Uh-oh, is right. And so he decided, well, my capacity is, especially in literary endowment, he's a literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So he decided to take the Vedas, which were in the sound form, put them in a written form. And one of the reasons is, in this age of Kali, people don't have the same kind of memory. If you've noticed, I've noticed, don't have the same kind of memory. We got that, not just previous ages, I can't remember lots of things. But when things are written, then you can refer to them again and again. Prabhupada taught us, if you want to remember something, write it down. It's the age of Kali, write it down. Even if you write it down, you may not remember it. You won't remember where you put it. So write it down. So he wrote it down. That's chapter 4. All the divisions of the Vedas, he put them together. He entrusted somebody, in that chapter 4 it mentions, when he wrote the Puranas, he entrusted them to Romaharshan Sutta, and a principal person from each of the 4 Vedas, and so forth. At the end of chapter 4, he does what people do when they've completed a project. Whatever that project might be, a writing project or a cooking project or a something project. You step back and go, how did it come out? Isn't it? So that's what he did. And as he was considering, the work product, he felt something. It was very pronounced. He didn't feel satisfied. And he was puzzled, why I'm not feeling satisfied. That's how chapter 4 ends. Chapter 5 begins with Narada Muni, his spiritual master, coming to visit him just at the right time, asking the right questions, giving the right answers, and sorting it all out. So, beginning of chapter 5, Narada says, essentially, Vyasa, you don't look so good. What's wrong? And he says, I don't know what's wrong, but I think you do. You're my spiritual master. And the answer that he gave was, everything that you've compiled in the Vedas is perfect, except you've neglected to put in writing the purpose behind all the Vedas. The essence of all the Vedas is the glorification of the personality of Godhead. These many verses. The essence of all the Vedas is that. There's steps through different procedures of sacrifice, the Karma Kanda section, the Jnana Kanda section, and the Bhakti section, but you haven't done sufficiently. Simply glorify the personality of Godhead. So then he gave him an instruction, a 2-part instruction. Sit down in trance, samadhi, and that which you realize in samadhi, expand the Bhagavad Purana that you've already presented in an essence form in detail. So that's what he did. Now, in between, Narada, there's a whole chapter where Narada describes who he was in his previous life. That's chapter 6. Narada in his previous life was an obscure nobody. He was the son of a maidservant who didn't know who his father was, and he just did some simple service along with his mother, because he was a little boy, in a dharmshala. During the rainy season, sadhus would come. Could you open this? Sadhus would come, and she would take care of them, their needs. And he was the assistant to her. So for 4 months, Narada in his previous life, a little insignificant person, served the Bhakti Vedantas, the great souls, and he brought them their food, and he would sit and hear their words, and he would wash their clothes, and any little menial service. But he became very attached to them, and they became very attached to him. And they took a liking to this very peaceful, not so talkative, nice little boy. And so they started giving him more instructions, direct instructions, and taught him and taught him and taught him many things. And at the end, before they left, at the end of the 4 months, they gave him a mantra, and along with the mantra, a process of Ashtanga Yoga. He was just a little boy, and but he was very qualified, and they left. So he had his consciousness had been raised by their association and their service, and the remnants of their food. That's mentioned specifically also. He felt ecstasy. He's a simple boy, but he was ready for the kindness that they gave him. And they left. Shortly after they left, his mother, when fetching water from a well, was bitten by a snake and died. So here's this little boy, no father, no mother. And he took it, somehow this is a plan of the Supreme, and he got up and left, went traveling here and there, doing this practice that the sages had given him, and through hill and dale and cities and countryside and forests and everything. He just every day did his practice and was experiencing the world, little boy. One fine day, sitting underneath a tree, a form of the Lord appeared before him. And he was stunned. And then, poof, that form of the Lord disappeared. So he started searching. Where did he go? Then he heard his voice, the voice of the Lord, saying, you pleased me very much by your austerities and your pure efforts. You will not see me again for the rest of your life. But continue like this, and you're on the path of perfection. And so he did. And the way the chapter ends, at the end of his life, Narada describes that as lightning and illumination occur simultaneously, so also when my soul left the body of that young person that was the son of a maidservant, instantly this form that you see before you now manifests a spiritual form, Narada Muni. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. He described it to his disciple, Vyas. It also says, Narada says, this occurred at the end of a day of Brahma. So there's some detail. At the end of a day of Brahma, it's Brahma's night. And at the end of Brahma's night, what happens? There's a partial annihilation, which means from all the way from Swargaloka down, so that the upper 4 planetary systems remain. Maharloka, Janloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, they remain. But the bottom ones, Bhuvar, Swargaloka, and the 7 subterranean heavenly planets, they remain. They're dissolved. There's details. There's drought for 1,000 years, no rain. Then there's fire that comes from the bottom of the universe, from the mouth of Anantashesh, and that dry planetary systems immediately burst into flames. So there's fire everywhere. In the upper planetary systems, it's so hot, they go to the upper planetary systems just so they can survive. But all those lower planetary systems, they burn to ashes. Then there's inundation. The ashes dissolve in the water of devastation. And it lasts for the night of Brahma. And then the water subsides. And then Brahma wakes up in the morning and does his sadhana and reconstructs the universe from those 7 + 3 planetary systems. He does it every day. That's one of his projects, every morning. Imagine waking up in the morning and you have to rebuild half the universe. He's very powerful. So in that next life, next day of Brahma, Nard appeared. Nard appeared directly as a son of Brahma, and so Brahma, Narada, Vyas, that's disciplic succession. Brahma instructed Narada, Narada instructed Vyas, and so forth, in disciplic succession. So, chapter 7, that's what I was putting in context. It begins with Vyas doing what Narada instructed him. He went to the sacred river, touched water for purification. He sat down by the bank of the river in trance. That was the first part. The second part is what his realization was. So those of you that are a little familiar with the Srimad Bhagavatam, these verses are referred to again and again and again and again and again and again by your acharyas, because in 4 or 5 verses is the foundation of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, because the instruction to Vyas from Narada was that which you realize, recompose, we could say, a second edition of Bhagavad Purana, because Bhagavad Purana, along with the other Puranas, were composed in essence form, and then the Bhagavatam that we have is the second edition. It's more comprehensive. 18,000 verses. So the 18,000 verses are resting on 4 verses, 4 or 5 verses. And we're going to read 2 of them. Do you hear a drum roll? And a trumpet? Boop, 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 boop. These very important verses. So, I'll go to verse 2. On the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation at Samya Prasa, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages. In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. So now comes the Sanskrit for verse number 4. 1.7.4, for those who like to look these things up. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak praniyate male. That's how it starts. So, bhakti yogena manasi. He, by the linking process, bhakti yoga linking process, manasi, he fixed his mind, samyak, in trance, completely, perfectly. Praniyate amale. Amale means without mala, without material contamination. In a pure mind, in trance, he did what Narada said to do, so that's how he started. But it's the trance of bhakti yoga, meaning there are different ways of describing what trance is. There's a very nice description of trance in Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. So it's quite similar, because those welcome. I'll wait till everybody gets situated so that we can stay focused. Because it's these words of the Bhagavatam are worthy of our fixed attention. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak praniyate amale. This word amala is used elsewhere in describing what the Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's the Amala Purana. One of the first commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the first, not the first, but one of the first commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam was written by a disciple of Advaitacharya. Some of you know who is Advaitacharya. Advaitacharya is in the Panchatattva, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, then over this side, Gadadhar and Srivas. So Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu in Gaura Lila, in Lord Chaitanya's Lila, and he had a disciple. His disciple's name was Srinath Chakravarti, and Srinath Chakravarti Thakur wrote in Lord Chaitanya's line the first commentary. There was others before that. But one of the phrases in his commentary, the introduction to his commentary, as he describes the Srimad Bhagavatam as the Amala Pramana. Amala Pramana. Amala means spotless, or without mala, without the contamination of anything to do with the modes of nature. Let's step back. I'm going to take a step back. The step back is when Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas, there was a large number of verses and there was some remaining number of verses. Those remaining number of verses were converted into a different type of Sanskrit than the original four Vedas, called Laukika Sanskrit. And that Laukika Sanskrit was the language used to compile the Puranas. And the Puranas were aimed at making it easier for people who couldn't understand this higher Sanskrit and the meaning to understand it more easily. And therefore he took those Puranic portion of the Vedas and targeted them towards those in the mode of goodness. Some persons are situated in the mode of passion. Some persons are situated in the mode of goodness. And so the Vedas were divided into these 18 Puranas. 6 plus 6 plus 6 makes 18. And of those in the mode of goodness, one of them is considered to be Shuddha Sattva, or Amala Purana. So I'm just highlighting this phrase. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihate amale. So the samadhi of Vyas was amale. No material contact in his mind, which is what Vyas was told by Narada. Then here's what he saw, because he was told, recompose Bhagavad Purana according to your realization. So first, apashat purusham purnam. Apashat, he saw, purusham purnam. Purusham purnam means the Supreme Person. And our commentators say, to say he saw purusham purnam means you saw everything, because everything that exists has a source of emanation. So to say purusham purnam, he saw everything that emanates from that original Purusha. He saw Krishna and all of the visions of Krishna's energies, spiritual energy, material energy, and the marginal energy. So the marginal energy, that's us, the living entities. And then there's all kinds of material energy, and there's all kinds of spiritual energy. And we're in the marginal position. Apashat purusham purnam. Then he also saw the illusory energy, specifically, the last line, mayam cha tadapashrayam. mayam cha tad. Tad's a pronoun referring to the Purusha Purna, the Supreme Person. He saw Maya under his full control. Apashrayam, she had taken shelter. So we can't see the Supreme Lord because there's something between us and the Supreme Lord. And that something is Maya. We see Maya. We don't see what's behind Maya. The energies have an energetic. It's an important feature of the Supreme Person's existence. He exists with energies. And there's different energies, but one of those energies is the Maya energy. Only in this case, he could see the Supreme Lord because Maya was behind him. She had taken that position. Mayam cha tad apashrayam. So that happens. Who's in charge of Maya? The Shaktiman is in charge of Shakti. The possessor of potency is in charge of the potency. So Purusham Purnam, the Supreme Person, in his fullness, not just his form, but everything, he could see that form because Maya stood behind, under his direction to do so. So going back to chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, when one becomes fixed in bhakti yoga, in the mature stage, then Maya has her place behind the Supreme Lord, and one can see the Supreme Lord. And the teaching in Bhagavad Gita about, it's a nice series of verses from chapter 6, that when one sees that Supreme Lord, there's a contentment within that can't be compared to anything. And the happiness, not only contentment, the happiness is such that you can't be dislodged from that happiness by anything. Even in Krishna's own words, the greatest calamity can't shake you. Now, generally, calamity is, very disturbing. What to speak of smaller things, calamity is very disturbing. But in Krishna's words, when one has that experience, direct experience, it's unshakable. Literally unshakable. Go the other direction. Generally speaking, our attention goes to problems. And the intelligence is very busy in problem solving. Do this and adjust that and something and something. And consciousness that goes away from who we really are is very involved in problem solving. What I'm just saying right now is essentially the same message that I gave at Texas A&M yesterday. Because the topic I was asked to speak about there was search for happiness. And largely, material consciousness is looking for happiness out there somewhere. And I just have to figure out my education, my intelligence, my capacities are to sort through what's out there and make the configuration so it looks like happiness. It feels like happiness. But it's not substantial happiness. In fact, we went on. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that search for happiness brings about misery. Say it the other way. If one isn't searching for happiness out there, the misery stops. What? Because the misery is the mistaken identity of what is really happiness. So if I'm going for illusion and I want reality, I'm not going to get reality. Here's the verse from Bhagavad Gita. You ready? Bhagavad Gita? I'm waiting till focus comes again. Yehi samsparshaja boga dukkha yonaya evate. I'll say it again. Yehi, he means certainly. Samsparsha ja. Samsparsha is the senses, and when the senses contact sense objects in the hope, the expectation for happiness, yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. Second, dukkha yonaya evate. Dukkha means distress, and yonaya means the womb of a mother is called the yoni. It's the source of birth of distress. What's the source of birth of distress? Anticipating happiness through bringing the senses to sense objects and finding there's some buzz out there called happiness. And that's material life. And when it isn't happiness, we try to adjust things. We are engaged very much, our intelligence is engaged very much in problem solving. The problems that are created by trying to find happiness outside of where the source of happiness is. It's unfortunate. But Vyasadeva realized this. So I'll say the verse again, we'll go on to the next one. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak praniyate male. He sat down in trance of meditation, samyak praniyate amale, in a way that there wasn't any touch of material contamination, amale, in complete trance of bhakti yoga, connecting with the Supreme Person. Then, apashat purusham purnam, he saw the Supreme Person in fullness, meaning all of his energies in fullness, his expansions, he saw the whole thing. Imagine, pretty overwhelming. And then he also saw mayam cha, the feature of Maya, behind, under his control. Because she was behind, because he said, okay, you go behind, I want to show my form to Vyas. So she went behind. What's next? Yaya samohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam. It's very short Sanskrit, but it's packed. Yaya means by whom? Some mohita. There's moha and there's some moha. Completely bewildered. Some mohita. Jiva, the living entity, becomes bewildered by that maya. Yaya samohita jiva. Atmanam trigunatmakam. There's different modes of maya. Same as yesterday. I mean, it was much simpler than this setting, but I showed yesterday at Texas A&M, I showed a picture, very nice drawing, a painting of Maya standing in the background, and then in the foreground there's the three modes. Vishnu in the front, Shiva on his left or our right, and Brahma on our left. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they're the presiding deities of the three modes of nature. The three modes of nature are the modes by which Maya bewilders the living entity. So it's a further detail on how Maya works. Maya is moved this way, that way, or another way, and combinations of ways, by the influence of the presiding deities of those modes of nature. So again, Vishnu presides over goodness. Brahma presides over creation or passion. And Shiva presides over destruction or ignorance. It's not that Shiva is ignorant or Brahma is passionate. They're in charge of that mode. They're empowered persons. Guna avatars, it's called. Guna avatars. And then in the bottom of the picture is the living entity, still within the womb. And before we even start doing anything, we're under the whammy of Maya. And then there's birth, and we're still under the whammy, and it transforms through different stages of life. But unless one makes a connection with the yoga process, because yoga means linking with the Supreme, and there are different systems of yoga, So according to those different systems of yoga, one can progress away from the moha, or some moha, towards realization of the Supreme. So he saw how living entities, yaya samohito jiva atmanam, although they're atma, their spirit, trigunatmakam, they're under the whammy or the influence, the bewildering feature of the illusory energy. He saw all that. Then, paropi manute anartam tratkritam cha vipajyate. He also saw the process of liberation. Para means spiritual or transcendental. The living entity is transcendental, but paropi, although transcendental, the mistake of the living entity is to think of themselves as a product of matter. And that's what living entities in the illusory circumstance of life do. And then there's so many varieties, because the modes of nature mix, and you get all the varieties of colors, or all the varieties of existence. And some like it this way, and some like it that way, and some like it another way, and there's unlimited varieties under the influence of the modes of nature. Although the living entity is not part of that. The whole system of yoga, or even specifically here, the system of bhakti yogena manasi, fixing the mind in devotion upon Purusham Purnam, is the means for becoming free from that sammohita, living entities being bewildered. So I'll just say it this way, and see if there's some discussion. I mean, I could go on speaking, but I think I'll see if there's some discussion. We're not interested in misery. However, we're attached to the sources of misery. That's a problem. So, what do? When you don't like misery, but you're attached to the sources of misery, you have to transfer what you're attached to being something other than the sources of misery. And there's different philosophies that say how to do that. But the bhakti, so rather than going through that list, and some say this, and some say that, and some say the other thing, the bhakti yoga process, which the Srimad Bhagavatam is expanding, because these are essential verses upon which Vyasa was told, from what you realize, then you write a second edition of the Bhagavad Purana. So it's teaching the bhakti yoga process, whereby one can link with reality, and as you dial up reality, then the darkness of illusion dissipates. It's very simple. The principle is simple. The difficulty is we're conditioned. And we're conditioned to trying to find enjoyment through the sources of misery. That's a problem. So therefore, the practice of yoga, or bhakti yoga, or any system of yoga, generally it takes some perseverance. Supposing somebody's complacent, they'll get some benefit, for sure, because that which is pure purifies. But as they become purified, and you become complacent, because now the misery has diminished to some degree, and you feel better to some degree, and then complacency is real easy until the misery kicks in again, and then one may get more serious, or some calamity comes, or something. You do your problem-solving program when calamities come, and it doesn't solve the problem, so then you start to look for a deeper solution. The higher reality that's behind the configuration of matter today. What's the higher reality? Spiritual life is meant for those who are thoughtful, Prabhupada uses the word manishinam. Don't say it negatively. Those that are not thoughtful are not going to pursue spiritual life. They'll continue to pursue problem solving and trying to make the configurations of matter nice, or nicer, or even heavenly nicer. That's more common. Much less common is to continue to be inquisitive and get really down to who am I really? And this what Vyasadeva was, because Vyasadeva was vastly learned. When Narada came and said, you got an A in your exam, use that language, but everything that you've written is just fine. You didn't write anything that's not from the Vedas, but you've given inordinate emphasis on the progressive path of material enjoyment. There's a nice Sanskrit word, pravriti, progressive path of material. You do this and that, and you'll get nice things. Om Jaya Jagadisha Hare. And, karma kanda, rituals that promise something, an upgrade. And people, pious people, impious people don't care. They want to build a staircase to heaven. But pious people understand piety leads to elevation. So they lead a pious life so they can prosper in this life, and after this life go to the good place. I remember one of the first, I'll just end with this. I remember one of the first times I visited in Houston. I was invited to speak at a family's home. They were very involved in the space exploration. Where's that place in Houston? Clear Lake. Yeah. It's Clear Lake, NASA. So it was people I'd never met before. So I tried an icebreaker. I said, let me finish my statement, and you tell me if this is correct or not. Before I finished my statement, everybody had their hands up. It was correct. The purpose of the Vedas, the purpose of spiritual culture of the Vedas is act with proper piety according to the codes of the Vedas, so that in this life you will prosper, and after this life you'll go to the heavenly realm. How many would agree? That's the message of the Vedas. Everyone said, yeah, that's the message of the Vedas. That's why we're here. They didn't say that part. So it's common. The purpose of the Vedas is not that. It doesn't mean to trash those things. It just means that's an intermediate step to understand something, because here's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation. If someone becomes very proficient at that, they're going to start thinking, there's life beyond this life. Beyond this life, there's heaven. That means I'm going to exist beyond this life. I exist beyond this life. So that such a progressive person becomes progressively less interested in karma kanda and more interested in jnana kanda. You with me? Jnana kanda, that portion of the Vedas that deals with the soul. Identifying myself as the soul. And with that identifying self as the soul, then comes detachment from finding happiness in the temporary, because I'm eternal. And it can stop there. But if it keeps going, then there's a supreme eternal, which I'm part and parcel of. And I would like to make that connection with the supreme eternal more vibrant and vital and meaningful. And so other systems of yoga are added to the Jnana Kanda section of the Vedas. And that other section of the Vedas is the Upasana Kanda. I'm just giving you like a big picture of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this big picture of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake. It's the pinnacle, the Amala Purana, that teaches the essence, the purpose of all of this is one thing. Vedaishta Sayar Var, right from Bhagavad Gita. Vedaishta Sayar Vair Aham Eva Vedyo. Vedanta Krid Veda Vedeva Chaham. Some of you may know the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna declares, the purpose of the Vedas is not this gradual elevation. The purpose of the Vedas is to know me. Vedaishcha Sayarvair Aham Eva Vedyo. And he then goes on to say, I know this because I'm the compiler of the Vedas. Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. So the purpose is really to make that connection with the Supreme Person. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. That's what Narada said to Vyas, you did everything just fine, except you haven't done sufficiently this one thing, that's the purpose of all the Vedas. So compose one literature resting upon this realization that you get in trance. And that will be, then you'll feel satisfied. Sang Siddhir Haritoshanam. We're not fun. He's got to go somewhere to have some fun. Whoop. Okay. Our host and hostess, you have any thoughts on this? Or anybody would like to comment? You might want to go, those of you who have Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly our host, you can look over those verses, 1.7.4 and 5, and it goes through 8. That gives the foundation of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And then it's expanded from there in so many nice ways. Any comments or questions? Yes?
So we have quite a bit of new devotees coming today. So as we explained the glories of Bhagavatam, so Bhagavatam is also, as we mentioned, literary incarnation of the Lord, non-different from the Lord. So we worship Him.
Okay. How many persons here would say you're in the category of a newer person? I don't see many hands. Newer persons? Come on, don't be shy. Okay. Has what I've said been relevant or not? Yes, no, or maybe? A little bit. Okay. Here's. Let me respond to what he's asking me to do, and then you can. In our line, we're in that same line, Brahma, Narada, Vyas. Our disciplic succession is in that line, and in that same disciplic line, there's a great acharya that assembled teachings about bhakti, because bhakti yogena manasi, so he assembled teachings about bhakti. A nice title, Bhakti Rasa, Amrita, Sindhu. That bhakti has rasa, it has taste, and the taste is amrita, nectar, and there's a whole ocean of it. So you dive in the ocean of bhakti rasa, and it's very nice. So he gives some things that are good that enhance bhakti, and some things that detract from bhakti. And of there's a number of items that are beneficial for bhakti. Of them, 5 are spoken, this is Rupa Goswami, that are most important. And one of those 5 is reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Worshipping the deity form of the Lord, serving the devotees of the Lord, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name of the Lord, and living in, where are we? Clear Lake? Sugarland, living in Sugarland. He doesn't say that. He says living in the holy place. And if one cannot live in the holy place, he adds that at least in one's mind one can meditate on the holy place where the Lord resides and performs activities. So why of those, the holy name is not different than the Supreme Lord. And the devotees are representing them. And the way to please the Supreme Lord is by pleasing those who are representing Him. It's natural. Here's how natural it is. Supposing, I think Prabhupada, my guess is Prabhupada got this example from his walks. Every morning between 6 and 7 he would take a nice walk because he had 2 heart attacks in the boat ride coming from India. And then later, living in America, he had another heart attack. The doctor said you have to exercise, at least, brisk walk every day. So he started brisk walk every day. And when he would go to parks, he would see there are VIP people, big business people, going for walks in the park. And commonly, not always, they have a dog. So he would say, supposing you want to meet that big person, you have to have credential. You can't just, go into their office and say, I want to meet Mr. Big Person. You have credential, you make an appointment, you can come see the big person. But supposing you're going for a walk and you see the man walking in the park with his dog. It's really simple. You just go scratch the dog under the chin, pat him on the head, and you made friends with the big guy. So similarly, to develop some affection from Krishna, develop some affection for those who are dear to Krishna. Very simple. So that's one of the 2 of the 5. Worship the deity form, serve the devotees of the Lord, chant the holy name of the Lord, most important, and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, because, as Radha Baba was saying, Srimad Bhagavatam is understood to be the literary incarnation. Let's go back to Canto 1, Chapter 3. One of the questions I mentioned from the beginning, this is just a scriptural reference from what I just said. One of the questions of the sages that were meeting with Sutta said, Krishna has left the planet. When he was present, religious principles were protected just by Krishna's presence. But now Krishna's gone. So where will religious principles take shelter now that Krishna's gone? And the answer is, shortly after Krishna departed, just like the sun will set in the west, but maybe on the eastern horizon, the moon is going to rise. And so similarly, using that metaphor, Sutta Goswami says, Krishna appeared shortly after the departure of his form, in his pastime form, in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation. Say it again, little distraction. Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary manifestation of Krishna, non-different than Krishna. The name of Krishna, because he's absolute, is not different than Krishna. The deity form of Krishna because it's the form of Krishna is not different than Krishna. And the Bhagavatam is not different than Krishna. So I may not be so qualified, but if I have Srimad Bhagavatam, I can associate with Krishna directly. And just a little sharing. From my experience, I've been living as a Hare Krishna guy for a few years now, like 54 years. Immersion. And my experience from reading Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, daily, is the world outside may change, but my experience of the world outside changes. From that absorption, of course, the holy name, and for me at least, Bhagavatam is really important. Serving the Vaishnavas, here we are, serving the Vaishnavas. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is in here. It's it's not just a lens through which I see things. It's in here. And my experience of the world around me changed just from that. And it doesn't have to take 54 years. It can happen much more quickly. But that's the effect of you come in contact with that which is supremely pure. What happens? You get purified within. And all the other things follow. Just a little detail. I was, before coming back to Houston, I was in Dallas. And there was a program at the Dallas Temple. And at the end of the program, speaking with some guests, the Pujari came and whispered in my ear. And he said, I can take you on the altar, you can place your head on Kalachandji's foot. Would you like to come? I looked at myself and I said, I'm not clean, I can't do that. Now, if it was just like my enjoyment, let's go. But if it's not about my enjoyment, it's about Krishna's enjoyment, you don't go unclean before the deity. The inside was okay, but the outside wasn't okay, so I didn't go. I said, maybe the next time. But our behaviors change when the inside is pure, is my point. What's on the outside changes because what's on the inside has changed. And the idea is to make things pure, amala. Okay. From contact with the Supreme Pure who is not different than Krishna. Now you wanted to add something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, for those who are not, could you say, maybe ready to dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada always emphasized that reading the Bhagavad Gita, systematically understanding, laying the foundation. So is there a risk for devotees to not sufficiently understand the Bhagavad Gita and just go straight to the Bhagavatam?
No. No risk. I mean, once upon a time I was a new devotee. And every morning, Srimad Bhagavatam. Every evening, Bhagavad Gita. It wasn't like there's a risk we shouldn't have Bhagavatam because we haven't understood thoroughly Bhagavad Gita. It's just, it was Prabhupada's system of combining the undergraduate and the graduate study. It was immersion. That was the system that he gave us. And Bhagavatam is the graduate study, and then there's the undergraduate study. You all can relate to that language. And so ABC is in Bhagavad Gita. And then you put ABC together, you spell words, and you get the Bhagavatam. So one enhances the other. There are mysterious parts of Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's quite okay. It's intriguing, and that then a curious person wants to understand more and hear more, and discuss with people that are knowledgeable, and it leads to sadhusanga. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so I think what we're going to do next is have an arti for the Bhagavatam set to welcome Srimad Bhagavatam in their home.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Namaste Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.